The sharp scent of burning wood and terrified screams forever etched themselves into Alara's nascent memories, a brutal symphony that accompanied the fall of her world. She was a mere child clutching a worn wooden doll, as the village square erupted into a scene of chaotic despair. Her parents, strong and proud, stood defiant yet helpless, bound at the stake, accused of treason against the very pack they had served with unwavering loyalty. The Alpha's decree was absolute, his voice thunderous, declaring them enemies, their bloodline forever tainted. The flames licked skyward, devouring not just their bodies, but Alara's innocence, branding her with the indelible mark of a traitor's daughter. A heavy, suffocating shadow fell over her small life that day, one that would cling to her like a second skin, chilling her even in the brightest sunlight. Alara grew into a woman of quiet strength, her eyes holding an ancient wisdom that belied her youth. Her movements were fluid and graceful, a silent testament to a resilience forged in isolation. Yet, despite her innate capabilities, she remained an outcast, a pariah within the very werewolf pack that was supposed to be her family. Every glance was a judgment, every hushed whisper a jab, reinforcing the belief that her parents' alleged betrayal was an inherited sin. She lived a solitary existence on the fringes of the village, her small cottage nestled amongst the gnarled oaks, a physical manifestation of her emotional distance from the others. The memories of that horrific day were her constant companions, a haunting echo that made human connection feel both impossible and dangerous. She carried the weight of a past she hadn't chosen, walking through life as if always braced for the next blow. Daily, Alara navigated a minefield of thinly veiled disdain and open hostility. Simple interactions became arduous tasks. When she ventured into the common areas, the chatter would invariably cease, replaced by an uncomfortable silence or resentful glares. Her attempts to contribute, to offer her skills in foraging or mending, were often met with sharp rebuffs or outright dismissal. Once she tried to help with a sick pup, possessing a gentle touch and an intuitive understanding of herbs, only to have the pup's mother snatch it away with a snarl, muttering about tainted hands. Such incidents were commonplace, small yet persistent wounds to her spirit. She sought no pity, only a place, a purpose, but the pack's prejudice acted as an impenetrable barrier. The unspoken accusation hung heavy in the air around her, a constant reminder of her inherited shame. She longed to prove her worth, to demonstrate her loyalty, but every path seemed blocked by the specter of her family's past. The path ahead seemed impossibly steep, paved with the stones of their judgment. The path ahead seemed impossibly steep, paved with the stones of their judgment. Yet, a shadow far darker than Alara's inherited disgrace began to creep over the pack. A mysterious affliction, subtle at first, then increasingly virulent, started to plague their numbers. It manifested as a creeping lethargy, a weakening of the wolf spirit and body, leaving even the strongest warriors vulnerable and their fur dull, their eyes clouded with sickness. What began as isolated cases soon spread like wildfire through the communal dens and training grounds. Panic, a cold, insidious beast, began to set in. Whispers of a curse mingled with desperate prayers to ancient spirits. The hunting parties returned with meager catches, their energy sapped by the unseen enemy, and the once vibrant howls that echoed through the forest at dusk grew weaker, tinged with fear and despair. This menacing illness, or perhaps an external force disguised as one, intensified its grip with brutal efficiency, claiming more lives each passing day. Pups whimpered, their small bodies racked with fever, while elders faded quietly, their wisdom extinguished long before their time. The Alpha King, a formidable and respected leader named Theron, felt the weight of his failing pack pressing down on his broad shoulders like a mountain. His once impenetrable gaze now held a flicker of desperation, a silent acknowledgement of his helplessness. He was a king accustomed to battles fought with tooth and claw, with strategy and strength, but this enemy was unseen, insidious, and ravaged his people from within. The proud, fierce warriors, once the envy of neighboring territories, were now shadows of their former selves, prone to fatigue and unable to shift fully. Morale plummeted, and even training exercises were abandoned as the vital essence of the pack dwindled. Theron observed his people, his heart heavy, knowing that every fading breath brought them closer to the brink of collapse. In their growing desperation, the pack's most revered healers, women and men whose knowledge of traditional remedies spanned generations, worked tirelessly. They brewed potent concoctions from rare roots, chanted ancient healing incantations, and applied poultices derived from sacred plants. Yet, nothing seemed to stem the tide of the sickness. The fever burned through their efforts, the lethargy refused to lift, and the death toll continued its grim ascent. The warriors, too, increased their patrols, believing a rival pack might be poisoning their lands or waters, but found no evidence of external attack, only silent, empty forests that seemed to mock their futile search. Young wolves, brave and eager, volunteered for dangerous missions to find rare ingredients in forbidden territories, only to return empty-handed or fall victim to the very illness they sought to cure. With each failed attempt, hope flickered and threatened to die out completely, replaced by a growing sense of dread that permeated every corner of their once thriving village. The Alpha King Theron, witnessing the agonizing decline of his people, felt a raw, unfamiliar fear grip his heart. He called for a rare midnight council with his most trusted advisors, his voice rough with despair, a potent plea escaping his lips. He implored them, with an urgency that shook the very foundations of their ancient traditions, to consider any and all solutions, conventional or otherwise, before their proud pack was entirely extinguished. The air in the council chambers was thick with unspoken fear and the heavy scent of defeat. He implored them, with an urgency that shook the very foundations of their ancient traditions, to consider any and all solutions, conventional or otherwise, before their proud pack was entirely extinguished. The air in the council chambers was thick with unspoken fear and the heavy scent of defeat. Unbeknownst to the frantic healers and the desperate Alpha King, Elara watched from the periphery, her keen eyes missing nothing. Despite her enforced isolation, she possessed a deep, almost instinctual knowledge of ancient herbs and forgotten lore, a legacy passed down in hushed tones from her grandmother. This wisdom, a clandestine inheritance, had been a secret solace for Elara, nurtured in the quiet solitude of her cottage. She saw the healer's frantic attempts, the same familiar remedies applied repeatedly, and a growing frustration simmered within her. They were missing crucial details, overlooking the subtle nuances that only generations of observation, passed down through a lineage dismissed as traitors, could discern. Elara, with her heightened senses and connection to the natural world, noticed patterns in the affected wolves that others, blinded by panic and tradition, simply overlooked. She saw the specific discoloration of paws, the unique texture of their fur, the particular catch in their breath that pointed to something more complex than a simple plague. As the pack's despair deepened, Elara began to act, driven by a quiet, unwavering conviction that transcended her personal pain. She couldn't stand by and watch her people perish, regardless of how they treated her. Under the cloak of twilight, she would venture into the forest, gathering specific leaves, barks, and roots, guided by the whispered teachings of her grandmother. Then she would meticulously prepare small, potent remedies. These she would leave anonymously, often near the communal spring or outside the dens of the most gravely ill, hoping they would be mistaken for forgotten belongings or gifts from a benevolent spirit. Initially, these small offerings were indeed dismissed. A patch of unusual-smelling leaves found near a sick pup was swept away by a dismissive elder. A carefully prepared poultice, left on a stone, remained untouched. Her reputation, the bitter legacy of her parents, preceded even her silent acts of kindness. No one connected these strange remedies to the outcast Elara. How could the daughter of traitors possess such knowledge? However, the relentless march of the illness continued, pushing the pack further into the abyss. And then a glimmer. A young female wolf, her fever raging for days, was found to have a small, oddly colored paste smeared near her muzzle. The next morning, her breathing was noticeably less labored, her eyes a fraction clearer. An old, seasoned warrior, whose debilitating cough had persisted for weeks, found a carefully wrapped bundle of dried herbs on his doorstep. The next few days his cough, though not entirely gone, was less frequent, less violent. These were not miraculous cures, merely subtle improvements, easily dismissed as coincidences, or the natural ebb and flow of the sickness. Yet, a few observant wolves, those less burdened by prejudice and more desperate for any sign of hope, began to notice a pattern. They couldn't explain it, but these small anonymous interventions seemed to coincide with minor, yet undeniable positive shifts in the afflicted. A seed of curiosity, tiny and fragile, began to sprout amidst the widespread gloom. Meanwhile, within the Alpha King's chambers, the atmosphere grew heavier with each passing day. Theron, a leader of immense strength and resolve, felt the foundations of his world crumbling. He had watched as his most trusted healers, his bravest warriors, and even the cherished elders faltered. The desperation in his heart grew into a gnawing emptiness, threatening to consume him. He paced his war room, the scent of stale fear and sickness clinging to the tapestries. He saw the subtle improvements in some of the ailing, the brief moments of respite from the sickness that seemed to defy the healer's lack of progress. His sharp mind, trained to detect anomalies on the battlefield, began to register a pattern. These sporadic improvements, though minor, were consistent enough to be more than mere chance. He dismissed coincidences as a weakness of logic. There was an unseen hand at play, a hidden source of knowledge providing relief where none else could. The Alpha King, now completely open to anything, however unconventional, however impossible, began to search for the source of these fleeting sparks of hope. He needed answers, and he needed them fast, before his pack was lost forever. He needed answers, and he needed them fast, before his pack was lost forever. The air in the council chambers had thinned with unspoken resignation, but Theron's resolve, though battered, remained. Alara knew her time for anonymity was drawing to a close. The small, whispered improvements were not enough to turn the tide, and the pack was still teetering on the precipice of oblivion. Driven by a fierce, almost primal need to save her people, she made the most audacious decision of her life. One crisp morning, when the mist still clung to the ancient trees, she approached Elder Lysander, a wise and respected pack member, known for his pragmatic mind and his position close to the Alpha King. She found him supervising the meager rations being distributed, his face etched with worry. Taking a deep breath, Alara stepped forward, her voice surprisingly steady. She offered a comprehensive solution, not just another anonymous poultice, but a detailed plan for detoxification, specific herbal regimens, and dietary changes she believed were essential to combat the unique aspects of the illness. She spoke of her grandmother's teachings, of ancient texts that described similar plagues and their forgotten cures, revealing a fraction of the vast knowledge she had meticulously hoarded. Lysander, initially startled by her direct address, listened with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. Elder Lysander, a wolf whose decades of service had taught him to be wary of sudden, unexpected claims, eyed Alara with a profound skepticism. Her words, though eloquent and surprisingly confident, clashed jarringly with the pervasive memory of her parents' alleged betrayal. He knew her history, the dark stain on her family name, and the pack's lingering resentment. How could the daughter of traitors possess such life-saving wisdom? His instinct screamed caution. He listened, his brow furrowed, to her detailed proposals, intrigued despite himself, yet deeply reluctant to trust someone from her lineage. The pack had suffered enough. Risking further damage on a whim, especially from such a discredited source, felt irresponsible. Lysander demanded proof, a tangible demonstration beyond whispered anecdotes of vague improvements. He needed something concrete, a verifiable efficacy that could not be dismissed as coincidence or wishful thinking, before he would even consider bringing her fantastical claims before the Alpha King. He wanted no more false hopes, no more futile efforts. The stakes were too high, the pack too fragile. Word, as it invariably does in close-knit communities, traveled fast. Whispers of Alara's bold approach to Elder Lysander, and her outlandish claims of a cure, soon reached the Alpha King. Theron, already on edge from the relentless spread of the ailment, reacted with a mixture of weariness and a flicker of something akin to exasperated curiosity. He knew Alara, or rather, he knew of her, the solitary outcast, the daughter of the accused. His initial reaction was to dismiss it as desperation, a misguided attempt by someone craving attention. Yet, the persistent, albeit minor, improvements he had observed in some of the ailing wolves nagged at him. He remembered his own desperate plea for unconventional solutions, and his discerning mind saw Alara's claims, however improbable, as potentially aligning with those sporadic, anonymous interventions. He was skeptical, deeply so, but also pragmatic. What did he have left to lose? The pack was facing extinction. She might be a charlatan, or she might be their very last resort. With a heavy sigh, a decision born of dire necessity more than trust, he ordered her to be brought before him. He needed to look into her eyes, to gauge the truth in her words for himself. The fate of his pack, his people, might just rest on the shoulders of the girl they all reviled. The order from the Alpha King, cold and unyielding, reached Alara like a summons to judgment. She felt the familiar knot of dread tightening in her stomach, yet beneath it, a steely resolve hardened her gaze. This was her chance, perhaps her only chance, to not only save her pack but to vindicate her family's tarnished name. As she was escorted through the winding paths of the Alpha's compound, the stares of the pack members were almost physical blows. A venomous mix of suspicion, resentment, and bewildered curiosity. She kept her chin high, her eyes fixed forward, refusing to cower. The council chamber was a cavernous space, dimly lit by flickering torches, their shadows dancing on the stern faces of the Alpha's advisors. In the center, on a raised dais, sat Alpha King Theron, his imposing figure a testament to his power, yet his face etched with a weariness she recognized from her own endless nights. He met her gaze, a deep, unsettling intensity in his eyes. Alara stood before him, a slender figure against the formidable backdrop of power and prejudice. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, with the weight of her parents' past. Lysander, standing beside the Alpha, offered a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, a flicker of encouragement. With quiet conviction, Alara began to speak, her voice clear and steady, devoid of the tremor she felt deep within. She laid out her findings, her remedies, her proposed treatment plan, not as a desperate plea, but as a reasoned argument rooted in centuries of forgotten knowledge. She described the unique properties of the rare mountain ash berries, the soothing qualities of the moonpetal root, and the precise concoctions needed to bolster the wolves' weakened internal systems, to cleanse the insidious lingering sickness from their blood. She spoke of ancient texts, of her grandmother's meticulous journals, of the subtle signs of imbalance in the natural world that mirrored the pack's internal decay. Her words were a cascade of scientific observation and ancestral wisdom, delivered with an undeniable authority that momentarily silenced the murmurs of skepticism. The Alpha King listened, his expression unreadable, his gaze unwavering. He saw the fire in her eyes, the passion behind her words, a stark contrast to the despair that had settled upon his own healers. Around him, his council members shifted uneasily. Elder Boren, a gruff, conservative wolf, scoffed openly, his heavy jowls quivering. This traitor's daughter speaks of ancient lore? Lies and trickery, Alpha. Her blood is tainted, her words venom. Others murmured agreements, their faces contorted with distrust. They pressed Theron, urging him to dismiss Alara, to send her away, to not risk the pack's precious dwindling resources, or worse, their very lives, on the ramblings of someone whose family had betrayed them. The pressure was immense, a tangible force radiating from the assembled wolves. Yet Theron's instinct, honed by countless battles and the heavy burden of leadership, stirred. He saw beyond the prejudice, beyond the shadow of her parents' alleged crimes. He saw the intelligence in her eyes, the quiet strength that had allowed her to stand before him, unflinching, amidst such hostility. He remembered the recurring pattern of small, anonymous improvements, the subtle shifts that had defied explanation. Could this be the source? Could this outcast hold the key? His mind, sharp and analytical, recognized the logic in her proposed remedies, the coherence of her plan, even if the source was deeply uncomfortable for his advisors. He weighed the council's vehement objections against the grim reality of their imminent collapse, against the faint, fragile hope Alara presented. The former was familiar, predictable, the latter terrifyingly unknown, yet pregnant with possibility. Enough! Theron's voice, a low growl, cut through the clamor of his advisors. The chamber fell silent, every eye turning to him. He rose, his commanding presence filling the space. His decision was clear, though fraught with danger. Alara, he addressed her directly, his voice resonating with authority. I will grant you this chance. A collective gasp rippled through the council. But understand this, the pack's survival hangs in the balance. I will assign you a critical task, a quest to gather the ingredients necessary for your cure. You will work under strict observation. His eyes narrowed, a warning glinting within them. If you succeed, you will have my eternal gratitude and the pack's. If you fail, if your remedies cause further harm, Or if your intentions prove less than honorable, the consequences will be severe. Not only for you, but for any who vouched for your improbable claims. It was a dangerous proposition, a gamble with the highest stakes, but for the Alpha King with his pack teetering on the precipice, it was the only path left. He had declared her their last hope. The Alpha King's pronouncement hung heavy in the air. A sword poised over Alara's head, yet also a lifeline thrown into her personal abyss. The critical task, he had called it, and with it came the terrifying understanding that the fate of the pack, her people, rested squarely on her shoulders. Her mission was clear. She was to embark on a solitary quest, venturing deep into the unforgiving wilderness, far beyond the familiar scent markers of their territory, to gather the rare ingredients critical to her cure. She needed the shimmering moonpetal root, said to grow only in the deepest, most shadowed crevices of the Serpent's Tooth Mountains, and the potent, almost mythical sun-kissed moss, which thrived only in the scorching heat of the ancient volcanic plains, an arduous journey that would test her fortitude and knowledge to their very limits. The Alpha had provided her with a worn map, marked with ancient symbols and supplies for her journey, a silent acknowledgement of the peril she faced. Alara departed at dawn, carrying only what was essential: a sturdy foraging bag, a small dagger for protection, and the heavy weight of the Alpha's words. The path she chose was winding and treacherous, leading her through dense forests where ancient trees loomed like silent sentinels, over rocky terrain that threatened to twist an ankle with every step, and across rushing rivers whose icy currents bit at her skin. She moved with a practiced precision, her years of solitary walks and hidden studies now proving invaluable. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every shadow, every unfamiliar scent heightened her senses, reminding her of the dangers that lurked in the wild, dangers she now faced alone. The isolation of her task was profound, a stark reminder of her continued outcast status. There were no companions to share the burden, no familiar voices to offer encouragement, only the relentless whisper of the wind through the leaves and the distant calls of unfamiliar creatures. She was an echo in the vast, indifferent landscape. Back at the pack's village, a strange mix of emotions swirled amongst the wolves. They watched Alara's small figure disappear into the eastern woods with a profound mixture of hope and suspicion, a dichotomy that reflected the deep schism within their hearts. Some, those who had seen the subtle improvements in their loved ones, or those weary unto death from the relentless sickness, harbored a fragile hope for her success. They prayed silently to the moon goddess, their eyes following her until she was gone, imagining the life-giving herb she would bring back. For them, any chance, no matter how slim or from whom it came, was better than the slow, agonizing descent into oblivion. They dared to dream of recovery, of health returning to their dwindling numbers. But for many others, particularly the more traditional and prejudiced members of the council and their loyalists, her departure was met with a different kind of anticipation. They secretly wished for her failure, seeing it as confirmation of her family's inherent treachery, a justification for their long-held belief that nothing good could ever come from the bloodline of traitors. They whispered amongst themselves, predicting her demise in the wilderness, or her eventual return with empty hands and a wicked grin, proving her deceit. They saw her as a dangerous wild card, upsetting the established order, and her failure would restore a twisted sense of justice to their world. They believed her quest was a fool's errand, a desperate move by a desperate Alpha. Unbeknownst to Alara, who believed herself entirely alone, the Alpha King, in a move that spoke volumes about his strategic mind and his deep-seated instinct for the truth, had secretly dispatched a trusted scout to monitor her progress. This was not a mission to interfere, to guide her hand, or to retrieve her if she faltered. Rather, the scout's primary objective was twofold: to verify Alara's efforts, to ensure she was indeed diligently pursuing the ingredients she claimed and not merely wandering aimlessly or worse, conspiring with unseen enemies. The Alpha needed concrete proof of her dedication. The secondary, yet equally vital, purpose was to ensure her safety from external threats: rogue wolves, dangerous predators, or even rival packs who might see a lone wolf as an easy target. Theron, despite his monumental gamble, was not irrational. He had placed the future of his pack in Alara's hands, and he would protect this fragile hope, even from the very wolves who scorned her. The scout, a shadow in the dense forest, followed Alara's trail, a silent witness to her desperate, solitary quest. The scout, a silent shadow in the dense forest, followed Alara's trail, a hidden guardian to her desperate, solitary quest. Days blurred into a grueling succession of climbs, treks, and cautious foraging. Alara reached the foothills of the Serpent's Tooth Mountains, their jagged peaks clawing at the sky. The air grew thin, the cold biting, and the terrain became increasingly perilous. One evening, as twilight painted the crags in hues of violet and gray, she heard a faint whimper, a sound of pain that pierced the wilderness silence. Following the distressed cry, she discovered a lone wolf, tangled in a crude snare, its leg badly mangled. The wolf was larger than any in her own pack, its fur a striking silver, and its eyes, though clouded with agony, held a fierce, untamed intelligence. It was a male, clearly from a distant, neutral pack, far from its own territory, a lost wanderer. Alara hesitated, her instincts warring. Her pack's history with outsiders was fraught with tension, and she had been taught caution above all else. This could be a trap, an ambush, a distraction orchestrated by any number of unseen enemies. Her mission was too vital to risk. Yet, the raw suffering in the wolf's eyes, the sheer vulnerability of its predicament, tugged at something deep within her. She saw not an enemy, but a creature in unimaginable pain, much like her own pack. Her healer's heart, honed by years of secretly tending to injured wild animals that others ignored, overruled her fear. Carefully, slowly she approached, speaking in soft, reassuring tones, her hands held open to show she carried no weapon. The silver wolf watched her, a low growl rumbling in its chest, a primal warning, but its body remained still, trapped. With gentle hands, Alara began to work, her movements precise and practiced. She cut away the snare, careful not to inflict further injury, and then applied a poultice of crushed leaves she always carried for emergencies. The wolf flinched with pain but did not bite. As she bandaged the wound with strips of cloth from her own tunic, she felt its eyes on her, a mixture of suspicion and a reluctant gratitude. When she finished, the silver wolf, still wary, managed to extract itself from the remaining trap and limp to a nearby rock, where it lay watching her. Alara made a small, smokeless fire and offered it some of her dried meat and foraged berries. The wolf ate slowly, never breaking eye contact. In the quiet communion of the wilderness, a fragile, unspoken trust began to form between the outcast healer and the injured stranger. The next morning, the silver wolf, whose name, she learned through a series of low growls and gestures, was Kale, surprised her further. Instead of disappearing into the dawn, he remained. He led her to a hidden grotto, shrouded by ancient, moss-covered trees, near a cascading waterfall. There, nestled amidst the damp rocks, glowed the ethereal moon-petal root, its delicate petals shimmering with an inner light, exactly as her grandmother's text had described. Kale had known its location, a secret passed down through generations of his own nomadic pack, who valued the root for its potent healing properties. Alara harvested the precious root with reverence, her heart soaring with a renewed sense of purpose. This unexpected alliance, born of shared vulnerability and a moment of compassion, had yielded a crucial component of her cure, a component she might never have found alone. Her journey continued, Kale silently trailing her at a distance, a loyal, if mysterious, companion. His knowledge of the wild was profound, his senses seemingly sharper than any wolf she had encountered. He guided her through treacherous paths, warned her of hidden dangers, and even led her to a natural sulfur spring, where, to her amazement, a patch of sun-kissed moss, vibrant and alive, clung to the steaming rocks. It was a miracle, a confluence of luck and the unexpected generosity of a stranger. Her bag, once heavy with fear and uncertainty, now held the tangible promise of salvation. She had gathered everything she needed and more. With the final ingredient secured, she turned, a silent farewell passing between her and Kale, whose eyes held a deep understanding she couldn't quite decipher. The long journey back to the Packlands was arduous, but Alara's spirit, fueled by her success, remained unyielding. She retraced her steps, her body aching, her clothes tattered and grimy, but her heart resolute. As she finally emerged from the treeline, blinking in the familiar sunlight that bathed the outskirts of her village, she was a sight to behold. Haggard and weary, her skin weathered by sun and wind, her face streaked with dirt, She looked more like a wild creature than the daughter of a once proud family. Yet in her eyes there was a fierce, unwavering determination, a quiet triumph. The first wolves to spot her stopped in their tracks, their initial shock giving way to renewed scrutiny. Whispers like dry leaves rustling in the wind began to spread through the pack. The outcast had returned, and she carried with her the promise of life, or perhaps the ultimate deception. Her trial was far from over. It had only just begun. The trial was far from over. It had only just begun. Alara, ignoring the stares and the hushed murmurs that followed her every step, moved with a singular purpose towards the Alpha King's compound. The heavy foraging bag, now filled with the precious moon petal root and sun-kissed moss, felt like both a burden and a beacon of hope. Her hands, though calloused and grimy, were steady as she began the painstaking process of preparing her remedy. The Alpha King, having been informed of her return, had designated a small, secluded hut at the edge of the healer's quarter for her work. It was a crude space, but it offered the privacy she needed, away from the constant, prying eyes of the main village. Under the faint glow of a solitary oil lamp, Alara carefully unwrapped the ingredients. The moon petal root pulsed with a soft, otherworldly luminescence, while the sun-kissed moss radiated a subtle warmth. She meticulously cleaned the root, separating the fibrous strands, and then began the delicate process of grinding it into a fine powder using a stone mortar and pestle she had brought with her. The moss required a different touch, a careful infusion in distilled water, exposed to particular phases of the moon, a ritual her grandmother had taught her. Every movement was precise, every measurement exact, for she knew even the slightest error could render the entire batch inert, or worse, harmful. The pressure was immense, a tangible weight pressing down on her shoulders. She was keenly aware of the unseen eyes, the Alpha King's trusted scout, who occasionally passed by, his silent presence a constant reminder of the stakes. Hours bled into days, marked only by the shifting light outside the hut and the rhythmic sound of grinding herbs. Alara prepared poultices, brewed steaming concoctions, and mixed carefully measured dosages. Her hands became stained with the vibrant colors of her remedies, her hair often matted with sweat and exertion. There was no time for rest, no moment for self-pity. Each ailing wolf was a desperate plea, each preparation a prayer. The Alpha King himself came to observe, his imposing figure filling the doorway, his eyes silently assessing her every move. He did not speak, merely watched, his presence a complex mix of authority and unspoken expectation. When the first batches were finally ready, a tense silence fell over the small gathering of the Alpha King, Elder Lysander, and the remaining head healers. Alara presented her remedies with a calm confidence that belied her inner turmoil. But the moment of truth was yet to come, the treatment itself. The first patients were chosen from among the most severely afflicted, those whose life force was rapidly fading. As Alara approached them, holding out small vials of her potent liquid or cups of steaming herbal tea, an immediate wave of resistance rippled through the onlookers. Many pack members were hesitant, their faces etched with suspicion. "Poison!" one distraught mother cried, pulling her feverish pup away from Alara. Another elder, his body racked with tremors, recoiled from the offered remedy. "The daughter of traitors seeks to finish us off." The whispers began anew, louder, more venomous than before. The deep-seated prejudice, momentarily eclipsed by desperation, resurfaced with renewed vigor. They feared a trick, a final act of vengeance from the lineage they had condemned. Theron, the Alpha King, stepped forward, his voice a low, powerful rumble that commanded instant silence. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, swept across the doubting faces. "You chose to trust me with the fate of this pack," he declared, his voice resonating with absolute authority. "I chose Alara. Her remedies will be administered. Any further defiance will be met with the harshest punishment." His intervention was absolute, brooking no argument, and slowly, begrudgingly, the hesitant pack members complied. It was a slow, agonizing wait. The first dosage was administered to a small group of 10, their bodies frail, their spirits dim. For a day there was no change, only the continued relentless march of the illness. Despair began to creep back into the healer's eyes, and the whispers of Alara's failure started anew. But on the second day a faint stir, A young female wolf, whose breathing had been shallow and ragged, coughed, a deep, cleansing sound, and then took a deeper, steadier breath. Her eyes, which had been dull and unfocused, now held a glimmer of awareness. Then another, an older male, stirred in his cot, his paw twitching, a subtle sign of renewed vigor. Slowly, agonizingly, the first treated wolves began to show signs of recovery. A ripple of hope, fragile but undeniable, began to spread through the hut, then throughout the alpha's compound. The fever in some began to recede, their dull fur regained a faint sheen, and the lethargy that had chained them began to loosen its grip. It wasn't a miraculous, instantaneous cure, but a gradual, methodical return to health. Theron observed, his earlier skepticism slowly transforming into cautious optimism. Alara, exhausted but resolute, continued her work, her movements now imbued with a quiet triumph. The first arduous steps had been taken, and the pack, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, dared to breathe a collective sigh of relief, a fragile hope blossoming in the shadowed corners of their hearts. The fragile hope blossomed in the shadowed corners of their hearts, and with each passing hour, that hope grew stronger, brighter. More pack members, those who had received Alara's carefully prepared remedies, began to show undeniable signs of recovery. The fever broke in one after another. The unsettling pallor lifted from their faces, replaced by a healthier glow. Their breathing deepened, their eyes cleared, reflecting a spark of life that had been agonizingly absent for weeks. What had begun as a trickle of improvement became a steady stream, then a palpable tide turning within the pack. Word spread like wildfire, not in whispers of suspicion, but in cries of relief and gratitude. Alara's reputation, once a heavy cloak of shame, slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to transform. The label of traitor's daughter started to fade, replaced by a new, powerful identity: the healer, the one who saves. The Alpha King, Theron, watched these developments with a profound sense of awe and relief. He saw the systematic, undeniable efficacy of her remedies, the meticulous precision of her methods. He recognized, with a clarity that cut through all lingering prejudice, that Alara, the solitary outcast, was not merely a contributor, but essential to their survival, truly the last hope he had declared her to be. Individual pack members, those whose lives she had pulled back from the brink, began to express their gratitude, first hesitantly, then with increasing warmth. A young mother, her pup cradled healthy and playful in her arms, approached Alara with tears in her eyes, pressing a small hand-carved wooden bird into her palm. A simple, yet profound gesture. An old warrior whose strength had returned, offered her a respectful bow, a gesture reserved for only the most revered elders. These small, personal acts of recognition, these genuine expressions of thanks, gradually, painstakingly, chipped away at the formidable wall of prejudice that had surrounded her for so long. The hateful stares diminished, replaced by glances of curiosity, then respect and sometimes even admiration. The cold silence that used to greet her in communal spaces started to thaw, replaced by hesitant greetings and murmured blessings. Alara, who had always walked alone, found herself occasionally accompanied, sometimes even sought out, by those she had helped, their gratitude slowly mending the deep wounds of her isolation. It was a slow, arduous process, but the pack was beginning to see Alara not through the lens of her parents' past, but through the undeniable reality of her present actions, her unwavering dedication to their well-being. The Alpha King, Theron, found himself increasingly captivated by Alara. He had observed her tirelessly, not just as a leader overseeing a critical mission, but as a man witnessing something truly remarkable. Her unwavering dedication, her profound skill, her quiet dignity in the face of constant scrutiny, all of it resonated deeply within him. He saw beyond the dirt and the exhaustion, beyond the tattered clothes and the pack's ingrained prejudice. He saw the strength of her character, her resilience, her fierce compassion that drove her to save those who had scorned her. He spent more time in the healer's quarter, ostensibly to monitor the recovery, but his gaze often lingered on Alara. He found himself drawn to the way her brow furrowed in concentration as she ground herbs, the gentle touch of her hands as she administered remedies, the quiet wisdom that shone in her eyes. It was a pull he had never experienced before, a powerful magnetic force that defied all logic and expectation. He began to see her not just as a healer, not merely as the savior of his pack, but as a truly remarkable woman, one whose spirit burned with a quiet intensity that outshone even the brightest stars. A profound curiosity and undeniable interest began to blossom in his heart, a feeling far more complex than simple admiration. The profound curiosity and undeniable interest began to blossom in his heart, a feeling far more complex than simple admiration. Theron found himself grappling with emotions he hadn't anticipated, drawn to Alara in a way that stirred something ancient within his alpha being. It was within this deepening connection, this newfound trust, that Alara finally felt brave enough to subtly begin investigating the shadows that still clung to her past. The pack's acceptance, however nascent, gave her a foundation, a fragile sense of belonging that emboldened her. She started by revisiting the few fragmented memories she had of that horrific day, the scent of specific herbs on her mother's hands, a particular glint in the eye of a guard, a hushed conversation she had once overheard between her parents and a visiting elder about trade routes and secret agreements. These small, seemingly innocuous recollections now seemed like threads, loosely connected, waiting to be pulled. As her influence within the pack grew, and her presence was less met with hostility, she found subtle ways to question those who had been present during the trials, or those whose memories might hold forgotten details. She spoke to the older, infirm wolves she was now tending, their minds often drifting, sometimes revealing snippets of conversations long past, whispers of alliances, or sudden shifts in power dynamics she found peculiar. There was an inconsistency to the official narrative, a hollow ring to the accusations against her parents that she had felt even as a child, and now, with her sharpened intellect and intuition, she started to see the gaps. The more she probed, the more she realized that her parents' alleged treason was not a straightforward act, but a meticulously crafted deception. Her quiet investigation, conducted discreetly under the guise of general pack history inquiries, began to yield unsettling clues. She uncovered whispers of a manipulative figure, a shadowy presence lurking in the periphery of her parents' downfall. The name, though never explicitly stated, was often hinted at through descriptions. The one who always benefited, the silver-tongued serpent, the unseen puppeteer. This figure, she slowly learned, had not only orchestrated her parents' alleged betrayal but had likely engineered several other lesser-known incidents of dissent or misfortune within the pack's history, always emerging unscathed, always gaining power. The trail pointed to someone within the pack's inner circle, perhaps even a current member of the Alpha's council, someone who had wielded considerable influence and had skillfully diverted suspicion. The motive, though still unclear, seemed rooted in ambition, a hunger for power that trampled over loyalty and truth. Alara knew she couldn't proceed alone, not with such explosive allegations. The revelation, if true, could shatter the fragile peace she had helped restore and potentially destabilize the entire pack. She needed an ally, one with authority, courage, and a deep, unshakable trust in her. There was only one wolf who fit that description: Alpha King Theron. The deepening bond between them, forged in the crucible of sickness and shared purpose, now felt strong enough to bear this new, dangerous truth. One evening, after the last of the recovering wolves had been seen to and the palace was quiet, she sought him out in his study. The flickering firelight cast long shadows as she recounted her findings, her voice low but unwavering, presenting the inconsistencies, the whispered patterns, the evidence of a deeper, insidious plot. Theron listened, his expression grave, his eyes fixed on hers. He absorbed every detail, every subtle nuance in her tone, every piece of fragmented evidence. He saw the conviction in her gaze, the quiet certainty that had guided her through the plague. Now, trusting her implicitly, his alpha instincts, which had once questioned her, now affirmed her. He knew Alara was not prone to flights of fancy. Her mind was too precise. If she had found these inconsistencies, if she suspected a deeper conspiracy, then it deserved his full attention. The thought of a traitor festering within his own ranks, having manipulated events for years, sent a cold shiver down his spine. It was a threat far more insidious than any external enemy. He clenched his jaw, his eyes hardening with determination. "You are right to bring this to me," he said, his voice a low growl. "We will uncover the full truth, Alara. Not just for your parents but for the future of this pack." He saw it as vital not just for justice but for the very integrity and future of his people. No more shadows would define their history. No more shadows would define their history. Theron's declaration solidified their alliance, transforming Alara's personal quest for justice into a shared mission, vital for the entire pack. Their investigation, now coordinated and strategic, began with a meticulous re-examination of the historical records, the old parchments detailing her parents' trial, the testimonies, the hastily scribbled notes, all of it. Alara's nuanced understanding of the social dynamics and hidden currents within the pack, combined with Theron's unparalleled access and authority, allowed them to peel back layers of deception that had remained undisturbed for decades. They interviewed aging guards, once lowly scribes, and even lesser nobles who had quietly resented the rise of the accused during their parents' time. Each conversation, each unearthed document, painted a clearer, more disturbing picture of manipulation and ambition. The pieces slowly clicked into place, forming a mosaic of betrayal. The carefully planted evidence, the manipulated testimonies, the opportune timing of an external threat that diverted attention, all pointed to a mastermind. Their relentless pursuit led them to a figure of unimpeachable respectability within the pack. Elder Kalen, the chief strategist, a wolf whose wisdom had been lauded for generations. The revelation was almost unbelievable. Kalen, whose counsel Theron had valued since his own youth, had been the hidden hand, the true orchestrator of the past treason. The shock rippled through Alara and Theron, a cold dread replacing their initial determination. Kalen had been a constant, seemingly unwavering pillar of the pack, his pronouncements always cloaked in the language of tradition and loyalty. The confrontation was swift and devastating. Theron, accompanied by Alara, summoned Kalen to his private chambers, presenting the irrefutable evidence they had meticulously gathered. Kalen, initially composed, his eyes still holding that familiar, sagacious gleam, slowly crumbled under the weight of the truth. His motives, once hidden behind a veneer of statesmanship, were starkly revealed. It was not a grand vendetta, but a chillingly simple lust for power. Alara's parents, loyal to the previous Alpha, had stood in his way, their principled opposition to his proposed reforms seen as an obstacle to his ascent. He had feared their influence, their strong moral compass, and their unwavering popularity. His plan had been to destabilize the old regime, paving the way for his own strategic dominance, and framing Alara's parents was merely a convenient, brutal means to that end. He had cultivated a network of informants and leveraged minor grievances to turn the pack against them, ensuring their swift and public downfall. The pack was utterly shocked, the deception cutting deeper than any physical wound. The news, when announced by Theron, tore through the village like a hurricane, leaving a trail of disbelief, outrage, and sorrow. How could someone so revered betray them all so completely? With the truth laid bare, justice, long delayed, was finally served. The Alpha King, standing tall and resolute, with Alara firmly by his side, brought Elder Kalen before the stunned pack. Theron recounted Kalen's crimes, detailing the meticulous web of lies and manipulations that had haunted their history. Kalen, stripped of his dignity and authority, offered no excuses, only a cold, bitter acceptance of his fate. The sentence was harsh, commensurate with the magnitude of his betrayal: permanent exile from the pack lands, stripped of his rank, his name, and his memory, erased from their history books. It was a visible, undeniable act of restitution. The Alpha King's pronouncement resonated with a powerful finality. In that moment, watching Kalen led away, Alara felt a profound sense of vindication wash over her. The stain on her family name, the crushing weight of inherited shame, began to lift. Her parents, though tragically gone, were finally absolved, their honor restored in the eyes of their people. The spectral shadows that had defined her existence for so long finally receded, replaced by the blazing light of truth. It was a victory not just for her, but for the fundamental principles of justice within the pack, ensuring that no wolf, no matter how powerful or respected, could manipulate the truth and escape accountability. The air, thick with the lingering scent of old injustice, now seemed to clear, carrying with it a promise of a new, more honest dawn. The air, thick with the lingering scent of old injustice, now seemed to clear, carrying with it a promise of a new, more honest dawn. A collective sigh, profound and deeply felt, rippled through the gathered pack members as Kalen was led away, his once imposing figure diminished by the weight of his revealed treachery. The immediate aftermath was a complex tapestry of emotions. Shock, anger, sorrow for the years of deception, but also a growing sense of catharsis. A heavy shroud had been lifted from their communal spirit. Families who had harbored secret doubts about Alara's parents, or felt guilt for their own participation in the ostracization, began a slow, often painful process of internal reckoning. There were hushed conversations around campfires, apologies offered and accepted, and a tentative rebuilding of trust amongst those whose bonds had been fractured by Kalen's manipulations. This period was one of profound emotional healing, not just for Alara, but for the entire pack, who now recognized the insidious nature of unchecked ambition and the devastating cost of blind prejudice. The truth, though painful, was ultimately liberating, allowing them to finally grieve for the real victims of Kalen's scheme and to acknowledge their own role in Alara's unjust suffering. Alara, once the silent outcast, now found herself at the heart of this healing process, not as a victim, but as a beacon of resilience and truth. Her status within the pack had undergone a seismic shift. No longer was she the traitor's daughter, whispered about and avoided. She was celebrated, her name spoken with reverence and awe. The very wolves who had scorned her now sought her counsel, not just for ailments of the body, but for wounds of the spirit. Her wisdom, once dismissed, was now cherished. Her courage, once overlooked, was now lauded. The pack recognized in her not only profound healing abilities but also an unwavering commitment to justice and truth, qualities they now understood were paramount for their collective well-being. She found herself assuming a more formal and integral role within the pack, no longer operating from the fringes. The Alpha King, in a public assembly, formally bestowed upon her the title of Chief Healer and Advisor, a position of immense responsibility and honor. This elevation was met with unanimous approval, a testament to her undeniable worth and the pack's desire to rectify past wrongs. Her quiet dignity and profound compassion had earned her a place among them, stronger and more respected than she could have ever imagined. This shared ordeal, the relentless pursuit of truth, and the ultimate triumph over deceit had irrevocably forged an undeniable connection between Alara and Alpha King Theron. Their relationship, initially born of desperation and professional need, had deepened into something far more profound. Theron had witnessed Alara's unwavering strength, her intellectual prowess, and her deep-seated moral compass. He had seen her stand firm against prejudice, heal the ailing, and bravely confront a powerful traitor. Alara, in turn, had seen beyond the Alpha King's imposing exterior, recognizing his deep love for his pack, his commitment to justice, and his willingness to admit when he was wrong. They had faced the darkest shadows of their pack's history together, leaning on each other's strengths, and in doing so had discovered a mutual respect and admiration that transcended their respective positions. Their eyes now met with an understanding that spoke volumes, a silent language of shared experience and burgeoning affection. It was a bond woven from trust, courage, and a shared vision for a future free from the lies of the past. The seeds of something beautiful and enduring had been sown amidst the ashes of betrayal. The seeds of something beautiful and enduring had been sown amidst the ashes of betrayal, and in the weeks that followed, those seeds quietly began to unfurl. The undeniable connection between Alara and Alpha King Theron deepened with each passing day, evolving from profound mutual respect into something far more tender, far more personal. Their interactions became charged with an unspoken electricity, a subtle awareness of each other that pulsed beneath the surface of their official duties. Theron, no longer bound by the rigid formality of his initial assessment, found himself openly acknowledging the deep feelings blossoming within his chest. His gaze lingered on Alara's face a moment longer than necessary during council meetings, a soft smile playing on his lips when she offered a particularly insightful piece of advice. He sought her out not just for strategic discussions, but for quiet moments, walks through the moonlit groves, or shared meals where conversation flowed easily, no longer constrained by the specter of past judgments. He found her presence grounding, her quiet strength a balm to his often burdened soul. Alara, for her part, felt the magnetic pull of his presence, the warmth of his gaze, and the undeniable sense of comfort she found in his company. For so long her heart had been a fortress, guarded by layers of hurt and suspicion, a direct consequence of her traumatic past and the pack's relentless ostracization. The idea of truly letting someone in, especially someone as powerful and significant as the Alpha King, was both exhilarating and terrifying. Her past trauma whispered doubts, reminding her of the fragility of trust and the pain of ultimate betrayal. She struggled with feelings of unworthiness, a deeply ingrained belief, fostered by years of being told she was tainted, that she could never truly belong, let alone be loved by a leader of his stature. Despite Theron's sincerity, his genuine admiration, and the undeniable warmth that radiated from him, Elara found herself pulling back, a cautiousness born of self-preservation. Could such a profound connection truly be real? Could someone like her, burdened by such a history, ever truly be worthy of an Alpha King's affection? The internal obstacles were immense, a battle waged within her own heart against the echoes of a painful past. Theron, with an intuitive understanding that only true affection could foster, sensed her hesitation, the invisible wall she still held around her heart. He did not push but instead offered patience and unwavering support. He continued to show her, through small, consistent gestures, the depth of his regard, the sincerity of his feelings. He valued her opinions above many, sought her comfort when burdens weighed heavily, and celebrated her successes with genuine pride. He spoke of a future where her wisdom would guide them, where her compassion would soften their edges, a future where she stood not just beside him, but intrinsically part of him and the pack. These tender moments of vulnerability and understanding, shared away from the scrutinizing eyes of the pack, slowly began to chip away at Elara's defenses. She started to allow herself to lean into his strength, to trust in the steadfastness of his emotions, to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, she was indeed worthy of this extraordinary connection. Their burgeoning relationship, unfolding amidst the pack's recovery, quickly became a powerful, living symbol of new beginnings and unity. The pack, having witnessed Elara's transformation from outcast to savior, and now watching the Alpha King's profound regard for her, began to see their connection not as a scandal, but as a testament to their own healing. It demonstrated that even the deepest wounds of division and prejudice could heal, that past grievances could be overcome, and that true leadership recognized worth beyond lineage or history. The image of the Alpha King and Elara, walking side by side discussing pack matters, or simply sharing a moment of quiet camaraderie, radiated a powerful message of hope. Their bond transcended personal affection. It was a beacon, showcasing that the pack was truly turning a new leaf, embracing justice, truth, and genuine merit above all else. Their love story still unfolding, whispered promises of a future where all were judged by their actions and their heart, not by the shadows of their ancestors. It was a tangible manifestation of the pack's renewed spirit, demonstrating that compassion could bridge the widest chasms, and that even a kingdom steeped in tradition could evolve towards a more inclusive, more loving future. The pack looked upon their leaders, seeing not just a king and his advisor, but a burgeoning union that promised an era of unparalleled unity and strength, founded on the very principles Elara had fought so hard to uphold. The pack looked upon their leaders, seeing not just a king and his advisor, but a burgeoning union that promised an era of unparalleled unity and strength, founded on the very principles Elara had fought so hard to uphold. Against this backdrop of a healing, hopeful pack, the powerful forces of destiny, long dormant, began to stir with an undeniable intensity. One crisp evening, under the luminous glow of a full moon, a light that seemed to mirror the clarity finally dawning in their own hearts, Theron and Elara found themselves drawn to the ancient clearing, a sacred space reserved for the most profound pack rituals. There, surrounded by the whispering ancient trees that had witnessed generations of wolf kind, their eyes met, and in that shared glance all hesitation, all doubt dissolved. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a primal recognition that transcended mere affection or admiration. A warmth starting deep within Elara's chest, spread outwards, intertwining with a similar sensation she felt radiating from Theron. It was a pull, an intrinsic knowing, a silent, powerful affirmation that reverberated through every fiber of her being. This wasn't merely love. It was the sacred, undeniable truth of the mate bond, a spiritual connection revered in werewolf lore as the ultimate union of souls. Theron's eyes, usually sharp and commanding, softened with an overwhelming tenderness, reflecting the same profound realization that Elara felt gripping her heart. Their hands, almost instinctively, reached for each other, fingers lacing together, and a powerful jolt, a surge of pure, unadulterated energy, flowed between them, sealing their fate. The bond was solid, immutable, a destiny finally embraced, a future irrevocably intertwining their lives and their souls. The pack, having been privy to the gradual unfolding of their leader's affections, responded with an outpouring of genuine joy and acceptance. There were no longer whispers of doubt or judgment, only a deep collective sigh of relief and celebration. They had witnessed Alara's journey from ostracized outcast to their undeniable savior, watched her unwavering courage and compassion, and seen her vindicate her family's name through sheer force of will and truth. They had witnessed the Alpha King, a formidable leader, openly fall in love with a woman shunned by many, choosing her not despite her past, but perhaps in some ways because of the strength forged within it. Her status as chief healer and advisor had already cemented her place, but this mate bond with their Alpha King elevated her beyond any previous expectation. They now saw her not as a traitor's daughter, but as their rightful Luna, a queen chosen by destiny and proven by fire. Her quiet strength, her unwavering wisdom, and her boundless compassion were recognized as the very qualities their pack needed in its leader, a loving counterpoint to Theron's powerful authority. The pack's acceptance was complete, wholehearted, a resounding chorus of affirmation for their union, solidifying their relationship and their shared future. This sacred union, blessed by the ancient traditions and celebrated by a unified pack, unequivocally ushered in a new era. It was a golden age born from the ashes of past betrayals and nurtured by the unwavering commitment to truth and justice. The leadership of Theron and Luna Alara was a testament to balance, his strength, her wisdom, his unwavering will, her profound empathy. Their combined leadership fostered an environment built not on fear or blind obedience, but on trust that had been painstakingly rebuilt, on the justice that had been fiercely fought for, and on a compassion that permeated every aspect of pack life. Under their guidance, the pack flourished. Disputes were settled with fairness, the vulnerable were protected, and innovation was encouraged. The lands around them thrived, their borders secure, their people vibrant and healthy, both in body and spirit. The unity forged through shared hardship, and the undeniable bond between their Alpha and Luna became the bedrock of their prosperity. Their rule was an embodiment of the profound lesson learned, that embracing truth, overcoming prejudice, and valuing inherent worth above all else, could lead to a future more brilliant and secure than any had dared to imagine. It was a legacy of love, justice, and enduring hope, etched into the very soul of the pack. With the mate bond publicly acknowledged and celebrated, Alara, now Luna, truly stood beside Alpha King Theron, a figure radiating quiet power and profound grace. The pack she had once tirelessly healed, the wolves who had once shunned her, now thrived under their unified leadership, their fields abundant, their young growing strong, their elders revered. Her past, once a heavy, suffocating burden, was no longer a shadow that defined her, but rather a testament, a powerful, undeniable testament, to her incredible resilience, her unwavering courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice she had championed. The scars of betrayal remained, but they were now symbols of victory, etched into the very fabric of their history, reminding them of the darkness they had overcome. The pack was not merely recovered, it was stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before, a testament to the profound lessons earned through hardship and the transformative power of truth. Their roar, echoing through the moonlit valleys, was no longer a cry of desperation but a vibrant chorus of strength and belonging. Alara often found herself standing by the window of the Alpha's den, gazing out at the bustling village, now so vibrant and full of life. She watched the playful pups tumbling in the dirt, the warriors training with renewed vigor, the healers moving with purpose, their knowledge enriched by her own ancient wisdom. Her heart, once a lonely, guarded fortress, now swelled with a profound contentment, a warmth that permeated every corner of her being. She reflected on her incredible journey, a path that had twisted and turned from the depths of ostracization, marked by the unforgiving stain of alleged treason, to the pinnacle of beloved leadership. It was a journey of unimaginable pain, relentless perseverance, and ultimately, an extraordinary triumph. She remembered the chilling scent of smoke on the day her parents were executed, the sharp sting of betrayal, the crushing weight of isolation. Then the desperate hunt for remedies, the quiet vigil by the sick, the terrifying confrontation with the Alpha King, and the brave solitary quest into the wilderness. She recalled the unexpected friendship with Kale, the painstaking process of uncovering Kalen's insidious treachery, the bitter taste of truth, and the sweet relief of vindication. Each step, each challenge had shaped her, molding her into the Luna she had become, a leader guided by empathy and an unshakable belief in the inherent good of her people. Her parents' legacy, once distorted and dishonored, was now not only fully restored but interwoven with the pack's resurgence. The justice she had fought for had not only cleared their names but had purified the very soul of the pack, cleansing it of its buried deceit. She had found true belonging, a sanctuary in the heart of her pack, a purpose grander than she had ever dared to dream. And beside her always was Theron, her mate, her partner, her unwavering source of strength and love. Their bond, a melding of two powerful spirits, was the anchor of her world, a constant reminder that even from the deepest despair, the most beautiful futures could emerge. He understood her in a way no one else ever could, honoring her past while illuminating their shared future. Her gaze drifted to Theron, who sat at a nearby table, poring over maps of their expanded territories, a soft, contented smile playing on his lips as he looked up and met her eyes. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their home, the love of her mate, and the thriving pack they led, Alara knew she had not only found her place in the world but had redefined what that place could be. Her story was a testament to the enduring power of hope, the relentless pursuit of truth, and the extraordinary strength that lies within a spirit forged in fire. What an incredible journey! From outcast to beloved Luna, from sorrow to profound peace. What do you think about Alara's incredible journey? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more epic tales.